So y'all actually got me to draw my least favorite Mortal Kombat villain of all time. Yep, I've been putting this off for quite a while, but today I'm going to be doing a redesign of Kronika from Mortal Kombat 11 and Mortal Kombat 1. The part that bothers me the most is I actually enjoyed this redesign. Okay, a little while ago I got a request to redesign Kronika, almost to give her like a human form. I'm not sure how Kronika would ever be brought back in a Mortal Kombat story, considering they made the excuse that a Titan cannot be brought back after being destroyed. My mindset was that she just wouldn't be brought back as a Titan this time if she was resurrected somehow. But I got to thinking of Kronika as a human almost, or at least just a normal god if nothing else. And I had to put my disdain for the character aside in order to do this. Let's be honest, as a Mortal Kombat villain, Kronika has to be amongst the worst. Her plan is ridiculous. She took forever to actually execute the plan. She's restarted it and retried it millions and millions of times, has yet to get it right, never got it right at this point. The mere fact that she created Geras to be almost her right-hand man and he gets stronger with every death and he's died millions and millions of times, it's like, dude, why are you getting defeated so much? Everything about Kronika's plan is stupid, and it still doesn't work in the end. I always loved the idea of, hey, I'm coming up with this elaborate plan to stop the good guys, but I'm gonna give them every opportunity to stop me. It's so dumb. I think the thing that bothers me the most about Kronika is there's way too much time travel now in Mortal Kombat's story, and it's a great excuse for them to use to be able to retcon stuff, but it's like Kronika is the excuse that was created to be able to do all of this nonsense. The fan term retconica is a thing for a reason. So yeah, I had reservations about redesigning her just because I don't like the character, so the thought of trying to come up with a cool design for her almost infuriated me, but the more I thought about it and the more I started sketching ideas and sitting down with it, it was actually kind of fun. Kronika's actually an interesting character to do designs for. Making her a weaker character, or at least somewhat normal or human if not, and giving her a nice redo as far as her story is concerned, I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to that at this point. But enough of revisiting Kronika's faults, let's actually get to her design. Alright, so for my base pose, I found a simple sort of Kronika-like pose. It's one that she's in and a lot of promotional material for Mortal Kombat 11, at least that I've seen. So I just used that as a base to start off to create the design. I toyed around in the very beginning with whether or not to give Kronika a hood or to leave her bald-headed. I was gonna leave her bald. The one thing I was determined not to do when designing Kronika is give her them chapped-ass lips. I don't know why they look like that in that game. But I also kind of didn't want her to be bald either. But it's that's kind of a staple of Kronika, but it's like in Mortal Kombat 1 her head was covered up with a hood, so maybe I'd like to do that. Later on, of course, I would give her a hood because it just looks cooler. But in the outset, she didn't have one. So I actually studied and looked at a lot of ancient Egyptian sort of outfits and whatnot to try to come up with some type of idea of what I wanted to do with Kronika. I found a few that I liked really well, and then I used a couple ideas from Kronika's actual past designs themselves to come up with the look I was going for. And I also wanted her to have somewhat of a regal design, elegant somehow. So even with the shoulder pads I gave her, I didn't want her to have just normal shoulder pads. The belt that I designed her with, I gave her almost a belt that resembled the chest piece that she has on her MK11 costume. I feel like it looks cooler as a belt than it did as a chest piece. Also, another thing, I've been doing a lot of redesigns almost in the vein of current NetherRealm Mortal Kombat designs, but I threw that out the window this time. So Kronika has a lot of cleavage showing in this design, almost like old school Mortal Kombat style. It's a more somewhat sexualized design than the normal Mortal Kombat designs nowadays, and I don't have a problem with that. I think it's ridiculous that they're running away from it so much nowadays. But I felt like Kronika would be a very different choice to sort of try that with, so I did that here with her. Like I said, a lot of cleavage in this design. I tried my hardest, hopefully somebody out there would be proud of me, but I resisted the urge to have that sort of weird asymmetric design that I love to put in almost all my redesigns that I've ever done on this channel. So I avoided doing that here. Somewhat proud of myself, though it really, the urge to just make a random piece of clothing and just stick it on one side of the body was definitely there. I don't know what's wrong with me to where I feel compelled to do that in every design, but I didn't. And in designing Chronica's face, I actually used the female, I'm sorry, I don't have her name at the moment, but the female that was used as her actual model for her face design in MK11. I would have to venture to guess she was also the model for Kronika in MK1 as well, or Damashi as she was referred to as. But after finishing out the majority of the design, like I said, I went back and finally gave her the hood and put that on top of her head to get rid of the sort of bald look for her, and moved on from there to start coloring. Before I continue, I'd like to remind everybody, if you haven't already, to like and subscribe to the channel. I'd greatly appreciate it. I'm a one-man show man in this channel. Anyways, moving on, I started coloring. The color scheme for the design I wanted to maintain from her previous sort of looks. So I had a lot of like navy blues and whites and silvers and teals. I almost thought about making her normal and giving her like black pupils or like regular pupils for her eyes, but then I thought, no. I don't know what type of abilities or power she would have, because it would make sense for her to still be able to manipulate time, but that being said, I didn't care. I still gave her that Kronika look. I just wanted to make it a little more simple. After all, Shang Tsung and Quan Chi are still sorcerers, so anything is possible. But adding the teal to her character design sort of helped out a lot, and then going on and doing little details with the teal after the fact, almost giving her like, I don't know, small semi-tribal designs on it, looked a lot better, kept it from looking as plain. And I didn't have but many places to do it in, so it kept the design looking simple, which is best. Didn't need it to get way too complicated and start making the design look tacky or ugly or anything like that. But like I said, I wanted her to look elegant in this design, so it's a majority of white throughout her attire and clothing. Almost clean look to her, which is almost the antithesis of her actual character, because she's anything but regally clean. She's psycho if you ask me. That being said though, after finishing the coloring and starting the shading, I started off first thing is doing the shading on the actual intricacies of the design that I did with the teal in her clothing first, just to make it sort of stand out and not make it look like it was just matted to the clothing. Then I went back and sort of did the shading over top of that. Like I said, added a little bit of pop to the design. I actually used the face model for Kronika as almost a base of how I wanted to shade her face, and just kept that in mind as I was shading the entire design. So knowing how I was going to shade the face was how I went about doing the rest of the pictures. So then moving on from there, I just had to finish the highlights of the design, which she pretty much needed highlights everywhere but the white clothing that she was wearing, just because I wanted everything to look somewhat shiny or metallic. And then on top of that, her skin was going to have a sort of reflection, or not a reflection, a shine to it as well. So I knew I'd be adding highlights to just about everything. Particularly the shoulder pads and the metal materials helped this design pop a lot. And even the face came out nicer than I imagined it to. So then I finished it up with the specular highlights, and I had this finished product where it's a brand new redesigned Kronika. I would love to know you guys' feedback for this actual redesign itself. I would also love to know you guys' thoughts on Kronika as a whole, and whether or not you would be happy to see Kronika return. I could almost venture to guess by the reaction when everyone thought Kronika was in Mortal Kombat 1 that you probably don't want Kronika back. I know I don't, unless they're going to completely like nerf and retool the character, as having her a Titan of Time just creates so many story issues, but that's a conversation for another day. In any event, let me know your thoughts below. Like I said earlier, like and subscribe if you haven't. And you all have a good one, and I'm out.
Friends, Chronica wins. Flawless victory.